Good evening, everyone. We have today with us Yasha Ramchandani. She is an editor and a graduate of FTII Pune. You probably don't know her yet, but you've probably seen something by her. And her work includes Thappad, Article 15, Bob Biswas in terms of film, Mismatched, Aranyak, The Verdict, State vs. Nanavati, Bo is Dead or Alive, among others in web series or short format shows. Her upcoming work also includes work with Anubhav Sinha, which stars Ayushmann Khurrana in a film called Anek. She also is editing a series called The Railway Men, which stars R. Madhavan, Divyendu Sharma, whom you probably know as Munna Tripathi from Mirzapur, and KK Menon. Apart from this, she is also the chief guest for First Cut, the 8th edition. We're enthralled to have you, ma'am. How does it feel?
Thank you so much. It's an honor. And I would have really loved to be on campus. But since it was like a bit of a short notice, otherwise, I would like it's been on my things to do to visit your lovely campus, and the student energy is always refreshing. I mean, otherwise you can get a bit rusty here. So it's always nice. I love going back to FTI, and I'd love to be there also sometime. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person, but it's nice that we could do this interaction.
That's great, ma'am. We'll proceed with the Q&A now.
Sure.
So my first question to you is, at what age did you start sort of liking films? What sort of attracted to you to films?
So, okay, going back in school, I opted for science, mathematics, economics as my subjects in class 11th and 12th. And then I figured that I was more interested in public speaking, and I did very little studying in 11th and 12th, and I was mostly organizing quizzes or doing this and that. So at that point, and I'm talking about 2003, so I very vaguely knew that I wanted to do something that was related to communication, as vague as that. So journalism was like, just like at the periphery of things, because that was the only thing known at that point that you could really do. I didn't know too much about filmmaking or film editing as such. And at that point, like, you didn't even have much of an exposure to world cinema. Like, our source of world cinema, like, I shouldn't be saying this on record, but it was the pirated market of Palika Bazaar. So that's, and then, like, so I didn't score very well in 11th and 12th because I didn't study too much at all, which you are required to in science and maths. So I was like, okay, and I wanted to leave home and kind of, explore things. So I came to Delhi, and thankfully there was only one college offering media and mass communication at that point, which was like the new hot thing back in 2003. I think we were the second or the third batch, something like that. So thankfully it had an entrance. It didn't want you to score like 100% in your board exams. It you pretty much wants to now. So I got through that. And then mass communication means we had, I don't know what your course structure is like here, but like we had 6 different media related subjects every semester. So which included advertising, media law, video, whatever, video, filmmaking, radio, this and that. So there I very naturally, and we had one, it was not a part of the syllabus, but one of our teachers, Mr. Vikrant Kishore, he just had this film appreciation class going every Friday. So that's when, I mean, like when I was in Jaipur in school, world cinema meant Titanic or, like Dunstan Checks.
Hollywood
Those,
movies.
just those. Yeah, whatever Hollywood release in theaters was the world cinema we knew. So with in these classes was when we started watching stuff, Schindler's List, No Man's Land, like these are the first things, Almodovar's Mother, and it was a whole new world had opened up. So I think that's when I kind of took 2 films. I still wasn't sure if I wanted to do filmmaking, but then we made our final film. So we were divided in these teams where you could each pick like whether you want to direct, edit, or do camera.
Right.
So before that we had like a bit of practice of editing. There were no Macs at that point in India. but our college had these Emacs, not IMAX, like these boxes Emacs. So we had a bit of a practice over there. So I was like, this looks like fun. So I opted for editing in my final film. And after that, I think I was more upset that we would be parting with these Emacs when I left college, because there was no way to get a Mac yourself. And I was like, who's going
Right.
to go back to Windows? So I think that was fun. And I like I've been that person who likes to put things together and, the thrill of it. So then I was like, okay, let's apply to FTI and see, because that was the only place I knew apart from SRFTI, which was like, definitely teaching some serious filmmaking. But
Right.
but FTI also, it's difficult to get through. So I was like quite real about it. There were 8 seats. So I was like, okay, if I don't get through, then we'll see. I mean, maybe I'll go to Bombay, assist or something. But then it happened, like I got through, which is why, like, I still maintain it's the best and the worst thing that's happened to me. Because best because it happened when it did, and like I just went floating from one thing to another. And worse because who knows, what one could have explored if that had not happened.
Right.
So yeah, then FTI happened, and then it was like 5 years. It's technically a 3 years course, which took us 5 because that's how FTI functions. I'm hearing it's different now, but so yeah, it was like watching films day and night, making films. So then it was the most organic progression to come to Bombay and want to work in films, or wherever, Bombay or regional cinema, and want to work in films. So
Okay.
that's
So
by and large.
do you think, was it there that you sort of started looking at the technical aspect of filmmaking, film as sort of a series of edits and something like that?
Yes.
Or was it in those
In
classes itself, in those film appreciation classes?
So the initiation was, the film appreciation classes was more like this whole attraction to this art form, which
Oh,
one
okay.
was
The charm of it.
previously not, not exposed to, and the power of it. I mean, you didn't know that films could do this, like, and even like in Hindi films at that point, because there was like the internet was still cyber cafes, right? Like there were dial-up connections at home. So I'm sorry. So there was this, even in Indian and regional cinema, we have some brilliant stuff, but one was not necessarily exposed to it, except whatever was shown on DD at that point, and later cable. And the 90s and Hindi films were horrendous. So so like it was only in those classes that I realized that okay, this is fabulous. And then a little bit of technical initiation was there, because we
Right.
were editing there, like 30-minute 40-minute documentaries or fiction films. So an initiation was there, but in depth was in FTI, like where we learned on Steam Deck and holding the film in your hands. And I sound like an old hag when I say it, but like it just made the whole thing very tactile. I am
Right.
an old hag, like talking to you all. So
And like, oh, so you've already sort of answered my question. I was going to ask you what attracted you to a film degree, but you sort of answered it.
Yeah.
We'll go on to sort of when you started working. I think you started working as a short film editor, right? Is that right?
An on location editor.
And on location
It
editor.
was,
And how
yeah.
was that like? What was the experience of being an on location editor? I think you worked on films like Utta Punjab and Go Goa Gone, among others, right?
Yeah. So on location edit was when
Also,
I
sorry.
came.
Could you also mention what an on location editor
Yes.
does?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll start with that.
Right.
So when I came from FTI, like when we graduated and I came to Bombay, which was in 2012, our filmmaking was in the thick of transitioning from shooting on film to shooting fully on digital. So
Right.
Go Goa Gone was my first film. It was only the second film in the Indian film industry to be shot fully on digital. The first was, I think, Sahib Bibi or Gangster or something. Yeah. So what this did was, because everything was now digital, you could get the rushes quickly on set and edit them together. So how it helped filmmaking and directors and everyone involved was that, sometimes you're shooting elaborate setups where you can't return to. And then if, like earlier, you would normally finish shoot and then come back and put it together, or, send it in batches. And then an editor would be sitting, whatever, remotely in Bombay or wherever, and putting it together. Here you could be on set, like at the end of the day the rushes could come to you, you could quickly put them, like make a cut and figure that is there something missing, do we need something. Now Goa Gone was a mammoth zombie rom-com,
Right.
so there was zombies and lots of shit flying
It
around.
was a wild
So
film.
yeah, I mean, for that time it was, I think, quite
Quite a
cool.
wild film, yeah.
Yeah. So that could now happen because one was shooting digital. The data was immediately accessible to you. So the rushes could come to you and you could work on it. So that's how an on-location editor, it was a very new profile sort of. And there weren't many people doing on-location edits at the time. What attracted me to it was when we were in FTI, even though I was technically editing the films that we made, but like everyone, like pretty much how it is in every, school, college and collaborative things, you're doing everything. So you're also like sitting, you're also working on the script, you're going for location recce's, you're on shoots, and then you're editing, unless you choose to otherwise. Some people did, but like I really thoroughly enjoyed being on shoots. So I was like really, how do you say, very sentimental about not being able to be on shoots anymore when our institute days were coming to a close. And then suddenly there was this, so I was like, wow, I'd love it. Like, it lets me be on shoot, be on location, still edit and get paid for it. So so that's how on location edit happened. And then what happens is, I mean, it's not something that just happens with the actors. You quickly get typecast. Like if you're doing, like for actors, if you're doing one kind of thing, similar kind of roles keep coming to you. So
Correct.
it can get very unimaginative like that. So because I did on location edits for a while, on location edits started coming to me, which I enjoyed because it let me travel and it paid well. And like shoot was over, edit was over, and it was all like fun and games. But then I realized there's no satisfaction. I'm not finishing the film. I'm doing a cut. And when you actually have to get down and, like just get down to it and start making it work, that's when I exit the process and the editor takes over. So I did it for a few films, but then it didn't feel very satisfying. So after Utta Punjab, I kind of consciously said no to on location edits. And at that point, web was just like, Utta Punjab was in 2015.
Yeah,
And web, I mean, yeah, Amazon and Netflix came very recently, like 2018 somewhere. But before that, there was these small little things like Woot was doing something,
correct.
or Alt was doing
There was
something.
TVF also.
There was TVF, yeah. So all of those things started happening around 2015. So which kind of gave me the opportunity to independently edit, although it wasn't feature films. But like, you started something and you finished it, and there was a gratification and the joy of seeing it on screen, and you could say that it was your work. So then I independently started editing web stuff. The first web series I edited was called It's Not That Simple. It had Danish Aslam directed and Swara Bhaskar acted in it. So yeah, that's how web started. And then I was waiting to get a film. And meanwhile, I was doing all the web things that you mentioned. And then 2018, 19 article happened. So then article, Thapar, Bob, Anek. And there's now some really exciting with Amazon and Netflix, like the whole thing has just opened up. So there's a lot of exciting work happening. So then now it's web and films alongside. So
Right.
that's the long and long of it.
What do you think is the difference, sort of, like doing an Article 15, like editing an Article 15 versus editing a Mismatched or a Aranyak? What do you think is the difference between like the episodic nature of it and sort of the film aspect of it?
Yeah. So there are a bunch of things. The episodic nature of it for sure. Like you are, and that primarily is taken care of during the writing stage. You have to get people hooked. You have to have them come to the next episode or binge or whatever. So that is the primary thing in kind of web series situation. Other than that, but that's something that's embedded in the structure. Like they write for it, they shoot for it, and you edit for it. Apart from that, I think the grammar of editing for a big screen, which is to say a theatrical, and editing for a small screen is different. When you are editing for a big screen, I mean, hopefully we are going back to theaters now after COVID and all of that. So one is always hoping to watch films in theaters. So what you don't have to worry about more often than not in theaters is that like people are coming with full concentration. They are coming to watch this film. Unless it's absolute crap, they're not going to like really walk out. They'll sit. So you have time. Like, you know,
Right.
there is, you can build those moments, and there are like possibilities of flourish, and you know what you call therav in Hindi, like just stillness. So the grammar of how long would you hold a shot, you know that you have people's attention to a certain measure. So then you kind of um like you let those cinematic flourishes, like you have the opportunity to build those cinematic flourishes here. When you're editing for web, you know that you're competing with 1,000 other things. Like you have 10 OTTs and you have 100 things on each OTT. So like if I'm bored at minute 4, I'll probably switch to something else. So that's a constant thing, which and there is this like exhausting cycle of feedbacks with the channels
Do
where
you
you know
think
they're
that affect
constantly
the edit also though? Like you need to
it,
edit faster or you need to make it a little more edgy in
uh,
that sense, edit
edgy for
wise,
sure. Edgy for sure. you
right?
you have to not let people's attention waver. So those are the kind of checks and measures, like even the feedbacks that come from the creatives. They're constantly assessing that, you know, are we lagging, like fourth minute are we lagging, or sixth minute are we lagging here. So those sometimes can get a little cumbersome, but then that's also the fun of it, because you know we are also I mean, we are creating it, but we're also the audience, and we are also those
Right.
people who walk away. So like this whole like, you know, notification culture, it's just really screwed our kind of attention spans. So we know that like if it's not going to capture my interest, I'm not going to watch it. So that's
Absolutely.
also the challenge and thrill of it,
Hmm.
where you know that, you know, you're keeping things going, and people will reach the end of the episode and the next one and the next one. So that does come into play when you are kind of editing.
Right. And so going into this, how do you think you select a take? You know, whether an actor, whether it's with like the biggest actor, you know, something like a Ayushman versus a slightly smaller one, say a Rohit Saraf. How do you decide between what's the take or like
I think
which
that
take? Right.
that does not change whether it's film or it's unless it's an advertisement, which is different.
Hmm.
But take selection per se, you're just looking for a moment of truth. You
Right.
just keep looking for it. You know the character, the actor knows the character. You just have
Hmm.
to make sure that the actor is like, you know, stays with the character. There isn't a false note in his or her performance. And then you keep seeing where he's lifted it more. So whatever gives you more in terms of the character, you just like stay as far away from false notes as possible, because like even small breaks in those things kind of hamper that suspension of disbelief. Like when you are for example watching Article 15, you are watching Ayan Ranjan, which is Ayushman's character. You're
Right.
not watching Ayushman. If you feel
Correct.
like at any point that this is Ayushman and not Ayan Ranjan, means I have kind of fractured that suspension of disbelief for you. And that may not happen consciously, you may not consciously eject, but like there is a waiver in
वो आ
attention
जाता
over
है.
there.
There's a slip
So
up
you,
there. Yeah.
yeah, so and sometimes you can't help it because you don't have a good take, you know, that happens to the best of actors. It can happen to anyone, like, you know, just one bad shot, one bad performance, one moment where the actor just switched off, then you live with it, but you try to keep the character real and forget the actor.
Right. And which actor's performance have you enjoyed sort of editing itself?
I think I have enjoyed a lot of them very thoroughly. I've been very fortunate that like uh, it's just been like very very talented people who come together, you know, like great ensembles in Article. Like apart from Ayushman, who's absolutely lovely, or Tapseen Thappar, like all the other people like Manoj Pawaji, Kumud Mishra ji is fabulous. Like I can't say enough how fabulous he is. Like both of them together, Pawaji and Kumud Mishra ji, are magic on screen. So like I remember, like I just sometimes sat and saw the rushes in awe, like everything is so good. It just makes your job much easier, and just infuses joy in it instead of struggle. So there is Sushil Pandey, there is Ratna Pathak Shah in Thappad, and yeah, I mean, like it's just been good fortune to witness these actors just do their thing. So
Right.
lots of them, yeah. Even when you say mismatch, like Rohit is a very young fellow, but he does not miss a beat. He's very, very good. So in fact, when I took on season 2 of Mismatch, I was wondering that, why am I sort of being approached for it? Because it's not my genre. You, like I said, like some people typecast you, sometimes you also typecast yourself. So
Uh,
like I was wondering, I had not seen Mismatch season 1. I thought I was not the audience for it. But then I had a lovely conversation with the director, Akash Khurana, who I've had absolutely lovely time working with. So I had a conversation with him, and it was just so nice and warm and convincing that I was like, okay, I'll watch season 1. And then I was like, even though it is very distant from my reality at this point, the target audience is, younger people like you, like people your age, perhaps. So but like I could connect with people. By the end of it, I had my favorites, and I was favoring this one over that one. So I was like, okay, why not? So if that was a whole bunch of actors who I had not known, their work I had not seen before this, which is absolutely on me, not on them, because all of them are established actors in a certain, like especially in a web space. But like it was a delight to discover them, him or Prajakta, lovely, lovely actors. So lots of
and
them.
you spoke about like sort of reviewing stuff, right? So do you end up watching your own
About, sorry,
movie? Reviewing stuff? So do you end up watching your own
right?
movies once they're released, or is it too?
I
Do you only see the problems?
no. So article I saw like 100 times. I was so
Right.
excited. It was my first film on theater. Every friend that wanted to go and said, let's go together, I'd be like, yeah, let's go together. So I went with my sister. I went with like a bunch of friends. I like premiere year. Usually people are like networking and doing PR, but like an idiot, I sat and watched the film in the theater because I was like, I want to watch it, because it was the first time I was watching it on big screen in a hall full of people, and that energy is very different. Like the film
Right.
almost finds its life, like when people are laughing at a joke, or when you find, like when you try to create a moment of silence and there is like silence in the theater, that those are the moments you live for. So I think article I saw a bunch of times. Thappad I had like kind of, like I was like, okay, fine, now let it find its own thing. And after Thappad, I mean, we immediately went into a lockdown. So
Right.
there wasn't that opportunity also. Yeah, but after that, I've become more chill about it. Now I'm like,
And
okay,
what about series? Do you also watch your series once they're out?
no, no, I, I don't. Simply because whatever I've edited so far has been like 8 episodes, 40 minutes, and I've seen it like 800 times already. So I don't. Like
Right.
I don't think I have seen any of my web stuff after editing. Once it goes, I'm like very happy ki chalo khatam hua. Abhi let people watch it. I'm happy to hear what people have to say, but I don't think I've seen any of it.
But when you're
Yeah.
watching these things, do you sort of have your inner critic going, "Oh, this could be different. That could
Yes.
be like that."
Yes. Yes.
So, are you able to
Article.
enjoy what you've done then?
So article and Thappad, thankfully, I was also, they were like my first two films, so it felt like, make or break, and I was very anal about like everything. Article, there's exactly one cut, which on the table also I was like, I just need to make it 1 second shorter, 1 second shorter, but we left it that length because we wanted to add a VO there in dub, which later fell short. So that I was article, that's precisely that one cut which I watched, and like I'm like, this I shouldn't have, let go of. But I don't know how well it's aged. I haven't seen it since it released, like 2-3 years, whatever it's been. So now I'm sure when I watch it, I'll find a lot, many things which, like, one things that you could do differently. And also article and Thappad were very constrained timelines. I mean, we didn't have a lot of time to edit. Article we finished shooting in April, the film released in June, which was like an insanely short edit window. So there wasn't a lot of time to go back, but like in given that paucity of time and everything, I think there was some amount of satisfaction to where we got the film sort of. But other than that, web stuff. So I feel like in terms of working, the purity that say an article had or a thappad had, because like you are literally like deciding every single cut, and suppose like you do not agree, it's great working with Anubhav sir. He like gives you complete freedom. He trusts you so fully that you don't have a choice but to deliver. So, and he does not get into like cut points, like the nitty gritties. Like he looks at the story as a whole and whether that's coming across, and we would discuss structure and this and that. So like you feel that you have a certain right on the film, like every cut point is the cut point that you kind of arrived at. But in web it's not so democratic. There are a lot of, like we discussed earlier, there are always these how do you say, uh, engagement, whatever markers that you kind of have to abide by. There are creatives in these channels whose whole job is to kind of ensure that that is happening. So a lot of times it becomes like you do not agree with a few things, but because there is marketing and creatives and this and that, you go ahead and still do it. So a lot of times, like when you watch web stuff, it's not, personally for me, it's not been as satisfying as films have been so far.
And in the work you've been involved, how much of it is sort of the director's vision versus how much of it is your edit itself?
So the job of my edit is to find align with the director's vision. So in that sense, the entire thing is the director's vision. When they
Right.
shoot it, the director's vision is already embedded in the material that I get. What my job involves is to harvest it as best as I can. So it's not like fortunately so far it's never been a conflict. It's always a matter of, there are like those creative differences sometimes, and there's discussions, and they have sort of been quite democratic. You either convince the other person or you get convinced, and
Right.
then you move on from there. So it's never one against the other. It's quite like, and it will feel organic and aligned when your work finds, like every department's work, the camera persons, the editors, the sound persons, costume, production design, and everything aligns with that one vision. There can't be too many cooks. It has to be
Right.
that one recipe, and you contribute your thing to it.
And since you worked with, say, directors like Anubhav Sinha, Abhishek Chaubey, among others, do you think, even Akash Khurana, and do you think sort of the stories that we're telling, or stories that the Hindi film industry and even in web shows now, what the stories that they're saying are changing?
Yeah, 100%. It's really coming of age now. I mean, if we look at our films from say the 90s or even the early 2000s, there were those one-off things even then which were like brilliant, but now there's so many more. And also because now we are exposed to stuff that's created world over. Like we are watching British television, we are watching American television. So I think people's sensibilities have also evolved. There is much more range of acceptance, and so even like especially the OTTs are more comfortable now kind of betting on it. So which is why there has been, like, now at any given point of time there's so much choice in terms of work. Like that's only happened in the last couple of years since OTTs came. Like you can really pick and choose what you want to work on. So I think that's been a big blessing sort of for everybody working. So definitely, I mean, it's for everyone to see the variety of things that we are making. There's something for everybody, and there there are enough series which like we can say that, like sometimes I feel that craft wise we still have to kind of still get there. We're probably still doing things that the West was doing like a decade ago. if not more.
Right.
So sometimes craft wise you think, but like the kind of like even the smaller, like there was the series recently called Tabor, like on, so not just Amazon and Netflix, but like Sony Live or TVF, you know, they're picking up lovely stories and like, you know, really weaving them beautifully. So sometimes the craft may not match, but the stories we are telling have definitely evolved.
All right. And last question, we're sort of coming back full circle to the film appreciation
Right.
classes. So one thing that First Cut sort of does for us as students and as filmmakers is it sort of exposes us to, you know, content from around the world, to content from students itself. And so how important do you think that exposure is, just for someone who's learning about film and trying to also become a filmmaker?
It is the most important thing, I feel. Like apart from your own practice, which is essentially just showing up every day for it, I think like even when, you know, with the kind of schedules unfortunately we work on in post production, which is why I'm not there right now in human form in person and here. So it can get really challenging to sometimes just keep abreast with whatever is happening. But I just like, it does not matter, like it's equally important for me as it is for you. We have to keep you know, nurturing sort of, what I like to think of it as like an inner sanctum. It's like a well that you have to, you know, you have to keep replenishing it so that you can draw from it when you're working. Because and of course, like, you know, there can be days which are absolutely rubbish, like in any other profession, but like similarly in filmmaking, in post production, a bad shoot day, a bad day at work, a terrible preview where, you know, like people will say things like कि समझ ही नहीं आई film. So, you know, so those, you have to find enough inspiration to get past those roadblocks, to get past those days and say, okay, no, I'll go back again tomorrow and figure this. So I think just to keep yourself inspired in that, most importantly, and to know what people are doing, and you know how far the boundaries of the medium are being pushed, because that's already been done. So now what do we do beyond this? Or that's been done so brilliantly, how do I kind of try and you know, bring it into my work? So it's, I think it's of utmost importance, and especially student films we were talking about, which is what First Cut is also showcasing every year. So I feel like the student films are our most honest works. You know, after that, like we may like there will be, as you go on working, there will be more polish to your work, there'll be more finesse, but there's also corruptions that come in. You know, you start thinking about market economics, there is a PR dictating things, this and that, you know, and obviously there is big money involved. As students, there's nothing to lose. I mean, there's everything to lose, so there's nothing to lose. So you kind of like, you just make it, like even when I look back at our student works, like sometimes I can distinctly see these people, because like these are the people you sort of you know, grew up with in a way, and stayed around for 5 long years in that age. So you know these people, and you think of those films, and you know that these people made these films. It makes perfect sense. And sometimes you look at them and see the work that they're doing in Bombay, and you're like, why is this person doing this work, you know? So like corruptions creep in. So student films are like very, very honest, and even if they do not have that polish sometimes, though now with like how much technical tools we have at hand, and how much exposure because of the internet, and you know, everything we have, it's obviously like from the student films we made back then a decade ago, and now it's a huge difference. So like I love to watch whenever I get a chance. So I think it's most important, and it's also important, I feel, to remember what you were kind of aspiring to then, and not lose sight of that. Like you may grow in your craft and everything, and you know, you've absorbed more cinema, more art, everything, but that core remains the same, hopefully.
Thank you so much for your time, ma'am. We at First Cut are so grateful to have you join us. This is the
welcome.
Q&A session with Miss Yasha Ramchandani.